In a society where division reigns over people's sense of judgment, the narrative of one's identity is now rapidly twisted by the eyes of others. While it may sound normal to many, the repercussions of this environment where hegemonic discourses rule can take many forms of social injustices. Take, for example, how people see street gangs in towns like Toronto. Their existence has been painted by the general media as societal troubles, which bring fear, death, and violence to all. Yet not enough people question how this narrative overlooks the underlying truth of a lack of social and financial help in districts ravaged by generational trauma. Thus, simple stereotyping can kill one's ability to be seen beyond the narrative they were given and cause repercussions of injustices such as the war on drugs. A political campaign done across the world that reformed the truth of precarious districts and amplified violence continuously. The truth is thus separate from the eye of the public sphere and hegemonic sectors. The truth is somewhat a pursuit that is interpersonal, humane, and devoid of ideologies.
The consequence of the single story is this: it robs people of dignity. It makes our recognition of our equal humanity difficult. It emphasizes how we are different rather than how we are similar.
In this light, I wanted to get personal, to understand how such an issue of truth-telling injustice transpires over a person's life. And so, I interviewed Kemba Mitchell, a mentor and an activist, relentlessly advocating for the empowerment and advancement of the Montreal Black community. My focus was thus to relate to the ideas of the TED Talk The Dangers of a Single Story by Nniozi Adichie and the biography of An Education. Specifically, how the former teaches the importance of representation and the dangers of generalization, as well as how power structures dictate who owns our narrative. While the latter, Cathy Park Hung's work, speaks on how forms of colonial mentality, hegemonic dominance, and institutional seclusion lead individuals to be mentally afflicted and have broken friendships. What I realized is how stories and experiences, as personal as they may be, all reconnect to the need to protect one's truth, one's humanness away from systems of oppression. For Kemba, she told me how hegemony worked her existence.
Having to show up so much more than my counterparts because mediocrity was not something that I learned about or that was ever going to be allowed as a Black woman. Just to do my job, so to say, I felt like I had to do so much more just to be recognized. That's what I felt. That's what I internalized now. That's all I know. So I only know how to be that worker bee. I only know how to go above and beyond. Because in a sense, there's a lot of times a stereotype that we may not necessarily come with that full package. Having a sense of belonging in a space that did not look like me. And when you're growing up as a young person, like that's in here, as a human being, that's inherently important to have that sense of belonging. And I just didn't necessarily
The
get
need
that
to
in
prove
spaces,
one's worth,
especially
and the feeling
when
of
it
anger
comes
that
to,
stems from injustice.
academic institutions.
Kathy speaks on these matters as well, as she relates to Helen's experience with white men. Pages 134 and 135 speak on Helen's toxic relationship with a white man who's cheating. Firstly, making her diminish herself, then getting angry at how she had been objectified. Helen was a scourge against these white boys. She would shout out pretentious fucks as she hobbled past them. 13-4, 13-13-5-5. Cathy Park Hong's claim on the diminishment of Asian American women's integrity around white men can be related to how believing in the systemic information that states that Asian women are meant to be passive is a fault in our ability to see each other as we are, as well as to see one another as objects of pity or inferiority when we let ourselves be guided by telltales.
She had felt sorry for me even before she saw me. Her default position toward me as an African was a kind of patronizing, well-meaning pity. My roommate had a single story of Africa, a single story of catastrophe. In this single story, there was no possibility of Africans being similar to her in any way, no possibility of feelings more complex than pity, no possibility of a connection as human
in our own
equals.
judgment, activism, and empathy. Otherwise, continuously falling into the trap of warped truths kills our psyche.
This sense that you always have to work, those are signs, those are a lot of different signs of depression look different for us. So understanding what that looks like and taking the time
And to be
that you need
complicit
to
in
just
corrupt information
rest.
networks becomes an inner violence, such as Kathy's colonial mentality concerning matters like her idealization of white British spaces and of the United States. On the other side, however, truth-telling is the true advocacy to redefine ourselves beyond forms of injustice. As Kemba had told me, we can't fix injustices, but we can fix how we work beyond them.
White supremacy, these systemic structures, these anti-black spaces, it is not our responsibility to fix those, and we can't anyway because we didn't build them. Is as Black, Indigenous, and racialized people, like how are we going to, if you choose to stay in these spaces, how are you going to not survive, survive, but thrive in a system in a healthy manner? How are you going to do that? So to me, it's all about empowering yourself, understanding where you come from, your origin, and therefore making sure that children
The last
are
paragraph
proud
of
of
An
where they come from,
Education
and
is a
it's
liberating
based
legacy
off our narrative, not
on what
theirs.
speaking about your truth can bring. Kathy stated that, regardless of how underestimated they were, she wouldn't have it any other way, as it kept her faithful to reflect on the integrity of their discontented consciousness. In other words, speaking her truth in her own way throughout her life helped her to re-evaluate her worth beyond the ways it had been trampled by hegemonic telltales. This is a strong statement on the value of gaining back our power, our stories.
Many stories matter. Stories have been used to dispossess and to malign, but stories can also be used to empower and to humanize. Stories can break the dignity of a people, but stories can also repair that broken dignity.